The King's Choice. You Only See My Beauty, but You Don't Know My Story. A memoir by Stacey Amawoye, as told to Teresa Laryea. Chapter 2. The Street Child. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. Psalm 82, 3-4. In spite of the fact that my great-grandmother took care of me, I could not escape the maltreatment and insults of other family members, who never ceased to remind me that I was an insignificant, illegitimate orphan. Their insults pierced my young heart and made me bleed inside. In a bid to escape the bullying and to find a means to earn more money, I joined one of my aunties at the Kanishi market, where I helped her to sell some shrimps and onions during the school vacations. When we went to the market, I secretly sold polythene bags on the side without my auntie's knowledge to make more profit. While trading, we also slept in the market with a sleeping area that was like a hen coop. It was adorned packed with a full mix of people from the surrounding regions who had come to the capital to find greener pastures but had no place to sleep. The people who were from many different tribes sold various products like bread, polythene bags, fruits, and vegetables. There were also drivers, drivers' mates, and all kinds of workers. It was a slum, each dorm full of between 30 and 40 tenants who paid according to their financial capabilities. The sleeping areas were rented out based on a first-come, first-served principle. We were crammed into the dorms, sleeping next to total strangers. Ventilation was almost non-existent, and I felt like I was suffocating on those hot nights. In the mornings, we paid for the use of the dirty public showers, and then we went out to work until nighttime. Contrary to what you would think, I loved this lifestyle. It was not easy by any means, but it was liberating, and it was free from the insult and abuse from my family. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to do my kayayu business, a service rendered to the public by carrying their heavy loads. I carried heavy goods like plantains and cassavas. I managed to collect the broken pieces from the foodstuffs, tied them together in a plastic bag, and took them home for dinner. While I did my kayayu business, I pinned my black polythene bags to my chest for sale. After selling my polythene bags, I went around looking out for the women who had come to Accra with snails and plantains to sell, and also helped them for a small fee. I remember that there was a lady who brought some cocoyam to the market to sell on Tuesdays. Whenever she came around, I took a break from my kayayu business and sold some of her cocoyam for her, giving an account of my sales at the end of the day. This was my life, hustling after my clients as a burden bearer. Sometimes they asked me to go shopping for them, and I would scavenge around the market and find their goods in obscure places. Some of these clients paid well, others gave me a penny, and the rest paid nothing at all but whispered a quick thank you or God bless you. Whenever this happened, I was crushed and felt that I had been used. In spite of my near-destitute condition, one thing that God gave me in abundance was my natural beauty. I have a pretty face. Because of my good looks and my young age, people could not figure out what I was doing in the market. They could not understand why I was not in school or living under the watchful eyes of my parents. It was common for me to hear comments like, "Where is your mother? Why are you here alone? Whose daughter are you? Why are you on the streets and not in school?" I would smile at them and say to myself, "You only see my beauty, but you don't know my story." As time went by, the population at the Kanishi market increased as more and more youth dropped out of school or ran away from their homes. This affected the kayayu business, as it became a matter of the survival of the fittest. In this case, the adage that the early bird catches the worm became literal. At this point, even the length of our slumber was cut short, and it was worse on the days when we were so many in a room. We had no option than to either queue in front of the stores or sleep under a bridge. We also slept by the showers and the gutters. Though I stayed and worked in the market for such a short while, I managed to study the behavior of the people around me, how they spoke, how they slept, and how they related to other people. I also observed how they supported each other in love and how united they were, and how they stood up for each other in spite of their poverty. One of the stressful things about living in the market was the issue of security. There were times when I had my few belongings stolen, so I always had to have my luggage near me. Also, we were never sure of where we were going to spend the night. It is so sad that most families of runaway children are not aware of what they are doing on the streets in order to survive. Not all of them are there because of homelessness. They are there also because they are escaping from the abuse and ill treatment of their relatives at home. They would rather fend for themselves amidst the danger on the streets than suffer a hellish existence at the hands of insensitive and cruel family members. Some of these children sadly end up as robbers and prostitutes, while others end up as housemaids who have to endure another kind of hell, like being maltreated by their employees, and sometimes even getting raped. Life on the streets was like living on a battlefield. Most of us were starving and desperate to make enough money to buy our next meal. Extreme hunger can make you desperate, and desperation can cause you to do the most unthinkable things. If you were a lady and you were a deep sleeper, you risked being raped or attacked. You always had to have your wits about you, and you had to know how to defend yourself. So I often wore trousers or jeans to protect myself. I had to arm myself against the lethal mosquito bites by wearing socks on both my hands and feet. When school reopened, I went back home to my grandparents, but I continued to passionately pursue my business endeavors. This time, I entered into the kerosene business, which I sold after school. One evening, as I plied my trade, I ended up wandering into a funeral party. There, I suddenly decided to throw caution to the wind and dance. So I danced my heart away, releasing my bruised soul to soar on the wings of the song. I got hooked on the feeling of ecstasy that comes from dancing. It thrust me into another realm in which I could escape. Even though momentarily, from the sadness and emptiness in my life, I did not know that my exuberant dance had affected the crowd until I heard them give me a thunderous applause. Right then, I had an epiphany. I could earn more money by dancing. So with that revelation, I entered into the dancing business, but I did so at a price. Each time I told my grandparents that I was off to sell kerosene, I hid the fuel on the way and made a detour to where I was scheduled to dance. I made a tidy sum of money and then went back for my kerosene. When I got home, I gave my great-grandmother the proceeds from my dancing, which she mistook as proceeds from my kerosene business. I hated deceiving her, but I knew that she would be extremely upset if she knew what I was doing. So I hid it from her. She was so happy about the amount of money I was making that she eagerly took it without even bothering to find out how I was making so much money selling kerosene. Neither did she worry about how late I was coming home. To show her appreciation and approval of how hard she thought I was working, by the time I came back home with the proceeds, she would have prepared my favorite dish for me, which was boiled cassava with pepper stew and Kita schoolboys, fried fish. Eventually, I quit selling kerosene altogether and focused solely on dancing, and I danced late into the night. This raised the suspicions of my great-grandmother, who reported me to my older half-brother. He was my mother's son who was adopted by an uncle at a tender age to learn carpentry. We never really had a personal relationship because we did not live close to each other. However, once in a while he came home just to give me a beating whenever he heard that I had misbehaved. So it was no surprise to me when my great-grandmother reported me to him about my late-night adventures. And I will never forget how mercilessly they disciplined me for it. One night I danced late into the night until I got home at around 2 a.m. As usual, I crept into my room and slid quietly into bed, only to suddenly feel the sharp and painful sting of a cane on my body. I jumped out of bed and ran to the door, but it was locked. I turned around in the darkness and saw my great-grandmother's silhouette. She was holding a bowl in her hand. Then I saw with surprise that my brother was also in the room. They both grabbed me, and as I began to struggle, some of the contents of the bowl splashed into my eyes. It was ground ginger, and it painfully blinded me as they tied me up and inserted the rest of the ginger into the most intimate part of my body while they beat me mercilessly. I will never forget their brutality and the excruciating pain and shame that I suffered that night. What saddened me most was that no one in the big compound came to my rescue, as they all disapproved of my nocturnal activities. The pain was excruciating. I was in hell. I cried like I had never cried before until I suddenly had an out-of-body experience. It is hard to explain, but I felt my spirit leave my body as I hovered from above and watched the two of them beating me down below. Suddenly, I woke up to find myself being fanned and water being poured all over me. I thought I would die from the pain, which was just too much to bear. My whole body was on fire, and I felt as though I had been skinned alive. I experienced hell on earth, and I lived to tell the story. My spirit was completely broken. My heart became as hard as a rock, and I became as stubborn and rebellious as ever. Friends, never think that the more you beat a person, the better they become. In my case, the woman that I respected and trusted the most turned herself into my tormentor and ruined the one relationship I had treasured throughout my whole life. Never again did I trust her or any other person from that day forth. That fateful day, I lost all my respect for them. My brother had never inquired after me or extended any form of help to me throughout my schooling. All I received from him were beatings and insults. He never changed. All I needed in my life was someone to care about me, someone I could confide in, and someone I could lean on. But I had no one. I was all alone in the world, fighting for survival. I cried out, but no one heard me or responded to my pain. Truly, the tears of the outcast are the hottest of all. You might be poor, your shoes might be broken, but your mind is a palace. Frank McCourt.